10 practical ways to stop clinging to your spouse in the name of love. Hi, friends. Welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. Today's video will be giving you practical tips to stop being clinging to your spouse. Most of you literally cling to your spouse in the name of love. What you fail to notice is that your spouse hates your clinging nature. It is because when you cling to your spouse in the name of love, he or she loses his or her personal space. So you should stop being clingy towards your spouse. When you do not cling to your spouse, he or she feels more relaxed living with you. You will cling to your spouse only when you are unsure of his or her love for you. When you are too possessive about your spouse, you cannot bear to share him or her with others. So you turn clingy and demanding in your relationship. You might feel that it is your intense love that makes you cling to your spouse, but your spouse does not think so. When you cling to your spouse, it makes him or her react in a way totally opposite to your expectations. Your clinging nature does not make your spouse feel loved by you. Instead, your spouse feels caged and smothered just living with you. How exactly do you cling to your spouse? You will not allow your spouse a moment of privacy. You want your spouse to spend time only with you. You're jealous when your spouse interacts with his or her parents or friends. You ask numerous times whether your spouse loves you. You keep texting thousands of messages conveying your love. Naturally, your spouse feels bored answering your demanding questions. And your spouse also feels overwhelmingly jailed by your clinging love. You're showing your love the wrong way, the clinging way. When you show clinging love, your spouse does not like it a wee bit. Because though your spouse loves you, he or she wants his personal space. You should stop acting clinging towards your spouse if you want his or her love. This video will be highlighting 10 practical ways to stop being clinging towards your spouse. The number one practical way to stop being clingy is to understand that your spouse loves you. You cling to your spouse 24/7 only when you're unsure that your spouse loves you. When you're not sure whether your spouse loves you, you do many things he or she dislikes. You become green with envy when your spouse spends time with his or her parents, friends, or relatives. Loving you does not mean your spouse should spend time only with you. If your spouse spends time with others, it in no way signals that his or her love for you has lessened. You should implement this simple trick to make your marriage work. The number two practical way to stop being clinging is doing things you like. Do not think and brood about your spouse all the time. Understand the simple fact that your spouse is an individual with his or her own likes and dislikes. Enjoy your own personal space when your spouse is indulging in his or her passion. Develop interest in some hobbies which will keep you preoccupied. Keep yourself mentally engaged. Indulge in doing things that interest you. When you keep yourself occupied, you'll become less clinging towards your spouse. The number three practical way to stop being clinging is forgoing the feeling of anxiety. Many a time you feel anxious about the intensity of love your spouse has for you. You have all sort of doubts about the love of your spouse when he or she seemed interested in things other than you. In your anxiety, you would not let your spouse out of your sight. You become demanding and clamoring. You want your spouse all for yourself. Stop. Trust that your spouse loves you. Your anxiety will only kill your mental peace. It will also kill the freedom of your spouse. And both will be unhappy for different reasons. You feel unhappy that your spouse does not spend enough time with you. And your spouse feels unhappy because you make him or her feel jailed. The number four practical way to stop being clingy is not to overstep your boundary. Everything has a boundary line in all phases of your life. And your relationship with your spouse also has its own boundary line. Marriage in no way gives you the right to trespass into the privacy of your spouse. It is the same with your spouse also. He or she must not intrude into your personal zone. When you understand the boundary line in your relationship, you will stop being clinging towards your spouse. The number 5 way to stop being clinging is to develop your own interests. When you have nothing to do, you become over possessive and clinging. So, do not make your spouse the entirety of your life. You should have a life of your own, a passion to follow. It might be gardening, pets, hobbies, writing, or anything which keeps you mentally occupied. When you have something to occupy your mind, you stop clinging to your spouse. Number 6 practical way to stop being clinging is being social. Do not expect your spouse to accompany you everywhere you go. He or she will feel overwhelmingly suffocated. So, you must indulge in your own personal social activities which keeps you busy. Meet your friends. Mingle with people you know. Stay with your parents for a few days. Go for long walks alone or with friends. The number 7 practical ways to stop being clinging is foregoing your doubts. You should immediately stop having doubts about the love of your spouse. When you become doubtful about the love of your spouse, you cling to him or her in emotional insecurity. Many a time you feel confused when your spouse spends his or her time by himself or herself. You assume that your spouse has stopped loving you when he or she spends time away from you. You're wrong. It is not lack of love which makes your spouse spend time alone. As an individual, your spouse might like doing his or her own thing without involving you. There is nothing wrong in it. So, throw away the unwanted doubts about the love of your spouse. The number 8 practical way to stop being clinging is taking care of yourself. You have all the right to pamper yourself. So, do not feel guilty when you do things you like doing. Go for shopping when you feel like it. Listen to your favorite music when you're in the mood for it. Do all the things you like to do for yourself. When you look after yourself, your need to be clingy in your relationship will disappear. The number 9 practical way to stop being clinging is to be mentally strong. You will earn the respect of your spouse when you are calm and reasonable. When you know how to look after yourself, your spouse feels relaxed living with you. When you do not create scenes demanding the attention of your spouse, his or her admiration for you grows. When you understand that your spouse needs his or her own spacing, he or she loves you for it. The number 10 practical way to stop being clinging is enjoying the time you have with your spouse. Your spouse loves to spend time with you when you do not raise doubts about his or her love. Talk about topics that interest your spouse. Do not always talk about family issues as it makes your spouse feel tensed and worried. Understand the simple fact that your spouse is your life partner, not your slave. Love your spouse deeply and intensely. But do not expect your spouse to be at your beck and call always and every time. Did this video make you understand the reasons you should stop being clinging towards your spouse? Marriage Realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage in a new light. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make love forever until death do us part your relationship goal.